So let's talk about tonight. Infographics. How many people use infographics in your day-to-day business with what you do? I know we definitely have one guy, for sure. All right. So infographics can be incredibly useful, powerful, but just like with anything in the digital marketing field, it's super noisy, right? So how are you going to cut through? It's all about your strategy behind the infographic and what are you going to do with it. You can't just create something and put it out there, right? So that's what Randy's going to come in. He's going to intro himself way better than I am. He's got, just much like we started this meetup a couple years ago, he's done the same thing in Dallas, except his group is like 1,700 people. Kind of a big deal. Yeah. So, you know, he knows what he's doing. So he's an author. I definitely encourage you to check out his book, pick it up. And Randy, it's all you. And he's got a couple cameras set up, so I think maybe take some selfies later.
Just that one, but the 360 ran out of battery.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so not that one.
You never know.
Thank you, thank you. All right, we got a lot to cover, so we're going to go really, really fast. All the links from this presentation I've put on this one page, so that you don't have to try and write down any URLs or type them in really fast, or try and follow along. So it's going to go really fast. So they're all on here, and if anything's missing or you want to see something after the fact, you're welcome to email me. But at the very top of this page is a link to Dropbox for the entire slideshow. So if you want to get these slides, the link is on this page. This is the only address you need to get. Okay. And it's small. You guys want to ask questions, that's fine. We're not trying to go through a big group. We've got a lot of stuff we're going to go through. So we're going to cover everything from design to publishing to promotion to tracking. We're going to do pretty much the whole gamut of infographics. We're going to start at the very beginning, why infographics work in the first place and why people like infographics. We all face information overload. So this is the research today that tells us every one of us, every day, has to filter through what they call the information equivalent to 280 newspapers per day. It used to be 40 in 1986. It was kind of nice to sit back and read the paper. You know, it was no big deal. It was 174 when I wrote the book, and 2014 was the last time they updated the research, and it was 280. So when people talk about you have a short attention span, that's why. It's because you're trying to get through more stuff. From a space perspective, this is a visualization of the size of a gigabyte. So this yellow square represents a gigabyte, and if you look at DVD movies, are 1 or 2 gigabytes. That's how big a gigabyte is. If I shrink that down, now this red square is a terabyte, right? And so your laptop is a half a terabyte or a terabyte, that kind of thing. Hard drives today are in the terabytes. I'm going to shrink that down one more time, go to petabytes. So now there's a single yellow pixel here. That's the gigabyte. And this petabyte is a little over 1,000 times larger than the terabyte. You can see the terabyte's the small red square. When we talk about data storage and data transfer and how much data is moving around, we generally talk in petabytes. We knew a long time ago, in 2008, that Google was processing 20 petabytes a day. In 2008, they don't really share that information anymore, but you can imagine it's much, much larger. Today's manufacturing processes, Seagate, I learned this last year, just the manufacturing of their hard drives generates 20 petabytes a day. And they have to deal with that data and use it for all their controls and their quality assurance checks and stuff like that. There's a couple different researchers that came to the same conclusion, that the entire written works of mankind in every language we've ever written down adds up to about 50 petabytes. That's the entire knowledge of the human race. However, in 2014, Facebook was talking about they were opening a new data warehouse, and their data storage was up to 300 petabytes. Why does Facebook need 6 times the entire written works of mankind? Guesses? Anybody? Exactly. Did you look ahead? Yeah. Right. So we talk about data, it's not all text, it's not all information. Obviously there's a lot of images, there's a lot of audio, and there's a lot of video. And this is the NSA data storage facility in Utah that they opened up. And the estimate was, because of course they're not going to tell anybody, but the estimate was that they opened the facility with a capacity of 2,000 petabytes, with room to expand quite a bit. And I've heard that they can only store up to about a month worth of data, and then they have to start deleting stuff that they have so much data. So they keep expanding and keep expanding and keep expanding and growing that. That's data storage. This is data transfer. Oh, and it cut off my number there. So this is internet traffic growth from the Cisco Visual Networking Index, and this is how much data is moving across the internet. In 2016, it was about 88,000 petabytes a month was being transferred across the internet. Sometime in 2017, we're going to cross 100,000. We don't know exactly when. And that's how much we're just moving across the internet. So as users and consumers of information, you have to dig through this and actually go out and find information that you're looking for, and it's very hard. From a design standpoint, we have a couple things in our favor. One is you are dominantly visual creatures. I've seen 70%, 90%, this study said 80% of your brain just processes visual information. And because of that, you can see an image like this, and within nanoseconds, recognize it and understand its meaning, that your life is in danger if you were to come across this in real life. You don't have to pull out your guidebook and figure out what that shape is in the grass. You just get it, right? And that's shape recognition. The other thing we use, it's called the picture superiority effect. The picture superiority effect, if I didn't show you anything and I just talked to you, or you just read text in a book or in the newspaper or something like that, 3 days from now, you're only going to remember about 10% of that information. However, if I can tie that information to visuals and that visual part of your brain, 3 days from now, you are now likely to remember up to 65% of that information. So we use infographics not only to communicate well, and we use data visualizations to communicate data and information, but we want our audience to remember it later, specifically in a lot of cases when they're going to make a purchase decision. Advertising's been doing this for hundreds of years. A big image tied with their brand name or a slogan or their product or something like that, because you're going to remember the visual later when it comes time for you to make a decision. And it's a big reason why companies have logos in the first place. You're more likely to remember a company's logo and recognize it on packaging and say, oh, I know that company, I'm more comfortable buying from them, than if they just wrote out the text of their company names. I do need to make the distinction of what is an infographic. We're surrounded by visuals, and not every one of those do I call an infographic. The word infographic comes from magazine and newspaper publication. For decades, it was just something they talked about in the back room when they were making the graphics for print publication. But the internet has really hijacked the word infographic, and now it means this visual, this JPEG, or this data visualization online that we share. The distinction I make is that this is a data visualization. It's just a chart. There are about 100,000 data points represented here, showing the 3 major stock market indices. And that's it. It's just a visualization of the data. Here you go. Figure something out. There's a middle ground called info art, where it's data-based, but it doesn't actually make anything useful. So this is a poster that represents the first, or not the first, but the 1,000 digits of the mathematical constant pi. Right? And so it starts, we got all 10 digits around the outside in these arcs, and it starts at 3 and goes 3.14159 off for 1,000 digits, and it's just one continuous line. It's pretty. They sell it as posters, but you can't use it. Right? You're not going to say, okay, what's the 300th digit of pi? Let's go to that poster and figure it out. Right? That doesn't work. So we talk about infographics, right? So infographics use data visualizations along with text and illustrations and layout to tell a complete story. This one has, I think, 25 different data visualizations in it, so we use data visualization as a tool to represent data and information in infographics. Not only infographics, we use data viz in reports, in presentations, in blog posts, and social media. So we use data viz as a tool all over the place, and we really need to be good at visualizing data. It's important to understand that whether you're going to design or you're talking to a designer to design with data, when you visualize data, you are putting that information into context for your audience. If you don't put that information into context, your audience is going to bring their own context, and you have no control over how they're going to perceive your information. So if I show you just a number, there are just over 3 billion global internet users, and I put it in a really big font on a really big projector, you still don't really have any understanding of that number. Every one of you is going to compare that to something you know already, and I've lost control as the designer of how I tell my story. I do have to tell designers all the time. Big fonts making the number big doesn't help. And you see it all the time, and you'll see it when you start looking. This was an infographic about how many users are on the most popular social media platforms. Starts at Facebook at 1.4 billion, goes down to the now defunct Vine was at 40 million. There's no visual cues to how big these numbers are. You literally have to read every one of them, remember them, do all the comparisons in your head, and so it really makes it difficult to understand that information. Anybody seen this series of infographics from Domo? So this is what happens on the internet in a minute. And they change the text size to fit in all of these different circle segments around the circumference here. But the size of these fonts has no meaning whatsoever. It's just as big as they could make it to fit in the base. And so it's actually a little deceiving when you see numbers like 1 million, which are really small, right? And then you see 72 is really big, or 3,000 is really big. So the size is actually anti the value, or the representation of the value. Anybody familiar with Creative Mornings? I've done a couple talks for them. Great group. But this is the brochure they have, and they share about how big they are. And you'll notice that their biggest numbers are their smallest numbers, because that's how wide that column is, and they can fit that in there. So only 3 digits there versus 6 digits. It's also tough to visualize a number all by itself, right? You have to provide a secondary number. There always has to be a second number. A bar chart with only 1 bar doesn't help, right? You can't see what's going on. So if I compare 3 billion global internet users to the total population of the planet, which is a little over 7 billion, we're more than a third, less half. We're doing pretty good. And now I've created that context and given you a way to understand that number and to perceive that number. But that's a choice I made as the designer. If I go the other direction, now this big blue circle represents 3 billion global internet users compared to the total population of the US at only 311 million or 320 million. So it's almost 10 times every man, woman, and child in the US. So now that 3 billion is really big because I've created a different context. And you got to be careful about how you choose other values to compare to when you visualize information. Online, specifically for infographics, we have what I call the 5-second rule. From millions and millions of views on the Cool Infographics website, we know that people only read an infographic for somewhere between 5 and 10 seconds. That's about all the information you have. And there's a really small portion that they actually want to dig in, and depends on the topic, right? And they're going to want to dig in and check the resources and check your data and stuff like that, but that's a really small population. Most people are just skimming and looking at the top level information. So in this one, right, where's Google making its money? Starts off with Google makes 97% of its revenue from advertising, has this bright, big, colorful pie chart, which is kind of glaring on the eyes with 20 different pie slices. But all you need to know when you walk away is that their key message was that Google makes their money from advertising. You didn't need to know that rehab was number 18 or lawyer was number 6 or something like that. That's detail, that's supporting information. But if you walk away understanding that Google makes their money from advertising, mission accomplished. You got the key message of the infographic. And we start every design project with an infographic creative brief that says, what's the one key message you want to communicate to your audience? Because we need to communicate that in the first 5 seconds. Everything else can be about your company or supporting information and detailed information, but we've got to get that message across up front. Some infographics break that rule. This is the 2011 Wisconsin crash calendar that maps out every automobile accident in Wisconsin in 2011. And the way this works is every column is the entire calendar from January down to December. But each column is a different cause of automobile accidents, right? So this orange cluster here, this column here is all deer. So that's deer season. You can see when suddenly it causes a whole bunch of accidents. Right next to it, this column is alcohol-related accidents. And almost everything happens on Saturday and Sunday. And you start to see patterns. And this is meant to be more discovery and reference information where you dig into the data and you're going to see something different than maybe the next person that comes along. Most of the infographics online are what I call a tall format. This works really well online. If you're going to share this information anywhere but online, it doesn't work well at all. You can see even here, I've had to shrink them down so small to fit on a presentation slide, you can't read any of those. But online, in the web browser, it does a really good job of giving you the scroll bar and giving you the way to scroll up and down. As long as that's the primary medium for publication, tall format's great. But if you're going to do handouts or presentations with it, you're going to either have to break it up Or generally, if we know that ahead of time, we'll design it to fit within like a letter size or an 11 by 17 piece of paper or something if that's where they're going to print it. There are a whole bunch of levels of what I call levels of simplicity, or also formats for infographics. Most of them, far and away, are static. JPEG or PNG images online, but that doesn't mean they all have to be. So a static infographic looks like this. It's just, this is a conversion guide for your kitchen. How many tablespoons in a cup, how many cups in a gallon, that sort of thing. And it's just a poster. It's just a simple infographic that people can share as a JPEG image. The next level up is zooming. So this is a poster of the history of rock and roll for about 70 years. And it's really detailed, and you can see how small it is. And so when you look at it online, it gives you the ability to zoom in and drag around if you're not going to buy the poster. If you buy the poster, it's nice and big and you can read it. But even though it's still static, this zooming interface gives your audience a way to interact with the infographic itself. Pop-up information. This is the New York Times when they visualize a lot of election data. This is from 2012. And the idea is they've hidden all the actual numbers until you actually hover over one of these polling districts, and then they'll actually show you the details. So if all you want to see is get a general feel for, how the information went, red, blue, and where the population areas are, that's great. But if you really dive in and see the numbers, you can. Otherwise, it hides those and keeps the whole thing visual. You can do clickable. So this is more of a navigation tool. So this is an organization of the top 26 most promising wine apps on the iPhone. This was back in 2012. But the idea is that online, when you see this, every one of these apps you can click on and it takes you to either that website or to that app on the iTunes store. So it's all an interactive interface. We move up to animated. Anybody seen wind maps before? All right, so wind maps is an interactive but animated where it shows you the most current surface wind speeds across the country, and you can zoom into different parts of the country. This is a historical one. They've saved a couple of them. That's where Hurricane Isaac was over Louisiana. But it's all code and makes it a whole lot more difficult to share. Right? It's hard to share this and post this on, say, Facebook or Twitter or something like that because you have to go to the site to see the visualization. Infographics, we've sort of taken that idea, and you've seen in a lot of cases we brought back the GIF. Animated GIFs, we can take an entire tall infographic and turn it into an animated GIF file. And so now you create motion, which draws your attention as well. Some of these, like this cheetah over here, the motion, in my opinion, has no functional purpose whatsoever. It's just pretty. Right? You just watch this guy run, and a couple of these other charts down here have some animation, but it doesn't help you understand the information any better. Whereas these flight patterns, where it shows you the forward and backward movement of bats and birds and insects, you can actually see, and it gives you a better feel for how do these creatures fly in the first place. It's actually conveying more information than, say, a static or even numeric data would by itself. And then we move up to videos. You can do animated videos. This one is a data visualization, and you'll see the years sort of clock by, but every time you see a red dot pop up, can you see the red dots? Is it bright enough for that? You'll see more as the clocks go on, but anyway, that's the target for opening every time one pops up. These are what we call motion graphics, right? So icons and data visualizations and text, and even sometimes there's a narrator. We'll slide on and off screen to tell a story, but do it in a video format. This is one the NPR did with actual live, color liquid vials to show how we went from 2 billion people to 7 billion people on the planet. Anybody familiar with Hans Rosling? He's the one doing this TED Talk. He just died recently, but he's done about 10 TED Talks and does an amazing job using data visualizations as part of his TED Talks. Can you see those? Can you see the targets? Okay. And then there's interactive at the top of the pyramid, right? So now you can actually change what's being displayed as the user and interact with the data. This is called the misery map, and it shows you all the airports that have flight delays, right? And so in this case, Dallas had about, for that day, was a little over 50% flights were all delayed. And you can see where they're going. You can drill into the multiple Dallas airports and which flights are where they're going and that sort of stuff. Going forward, headed for data visualization infographics, we're doing two different directions. One is smaller displays, right? Phones, obviously, but even as small as your watch face, as well as going the other direction as virtual and augmented reality. And I was playing with my 360 camera earlier. We're even doing data visualizations and putting them into 360 environments, that type of thing. And searching for the search term infographic. This is Google Trends and showing how many people put the word infographic in their search. And it continues to grow. I started the Cool Infographics blog in 2007, and it barely even shows up as a blip anymore. People are actually actively searching for infographics. So good infographics, they're fast, 5-second rule. You got to be able to process that information quickly. They're memorable because you made it visual in the first place. And you want it to be actionable. You want to have some sort of action, call to action, or even conclusion in your design. A number of companies use infographics both externally and internally. Externally is marketing, and these are all the public ones you see online. A lot of the work we do is actually internal under NDA using proprietary confidential data. They have so much data internally, and it gets bigger and bigger, like all that Seagate data, that they're never going to publish publicly. That's not public data. That's valuable data that they have as a company, but they want to make better decisions about it internally and share that information with their employee, their sales team, their board, whoever. And so we do a lot of designs and using infographics internally. Online, so here's Ray's, right? So here's Ray's design about how affiliate marketing works. It's a 10-step process, and it could have been a bullet list in a blog post, but by making it visual, it drew a whole bunch more traffic, and she now sells these as posters to raise money for charity. So you can buy this as a poster. Most companies are good at using popular, interesting, related topics to their business, and that key one is related, because the name, the word, and the title of the infographic, you want that to relate to your business and be the same type of keywords you want to drive traffic to your website. PR. Purely for PR purposes, we did this one for Honda when they released the 2013 Honda Accord. And they took it around as this retractable banner to all their press events across the country when they unveiled the new 2013 Honda Accord. And they gave it out on USB drives to all the members of the press. And it wasn't until about, I think, 4 months later, they just sort of threw it up on Flickr. Right? And it wasn't really meant for public consumption. It was meant to get this information to automotive reporters and get them excited about the car itself. A number of companies share internal data. Some of that, that proprietary internal data actually becomes valuable industry data. This is a series that Hotels.com did because they have information from all the hotel chains. They can share what they've seen from price changes or how many people are going to different destinations. This red one in the middle is one they did for fun. Is they did a survey of what do people want from a hotel on Valentine's night. And whether it's, I want bubble bath, or I want champagne, or I want, a nice fireplace, or whatever. How-tos are way more valuable than infographics that feel like advertisements, right? People want to share valuable information. They want to read valuable information themselves, but they're more likely to share if it's a how-to, how to match coats or shirts and ties, how to pick an eyeglass shape for your face, how to bake an apple pie. It's very informative, and then at the bottom it says who the company was that designed that one. But it doesn't feel like a heavy advertisement, it's just valuable information. Company elevator pitches, again, 5-second rule. This is much more, probably closer to a 30-second elevator pitch, but it's, what are those 5 things you want to tell somebody about your company that you want them to remember in 30 seconds? And put that in a handout, or in this case, a retractable banner, or whatever, and be very concise and clear about talk about your company. People are starting to put infographics and data visualizations into emails. Custom individual data emails this is from Nest and Sumall. You guys familiar with Sumall? Where you can track your social accounts and stuff like that. But every single week, I'll get an email from Sumall that says how many tweets, how many followers, what my reach was, and it's very custom data, and it creates this data visualization infographic in email. And then there's serious topics. Charities and humanitarian organizations trying to get their message across. This was a 12-year history of bombing in Sudan. And it was just this horrific thing going on, but they needed to get that information out and why they need help, why they need to raise money, why they need to make influence to politicians. Okay, so design tips, like I said, if you're designing your own, or if you're going to work with a designer or a design team internally, there are just a couple things, because I want to jump over to the publishing part, but I'll talk a little bit about design. One is you got to tell a story. You can't just throw your data out there and just expect people to understand it. You've got to have a point. And when you visualize data, there are generally 2 goals. Discovery, like that Wisconsin crash calendar where people can just sort of look at it, they might come back looking for something different later. It's meant to show a whole bunch of data in a bunch of different ways. Versus communication, which is telling that one key message in 5 seconds, right? That's where you're really targeted in trying to tell a very concise message. So this is how I show the difference between that. So everybody familiar with Where's Waldo, right? So this is a discovery data viz, right? Here's all the data. And some companies get confused that they think they need to show all the data because that gives them credibility. Look at all the data we have. When it actually makes the message very confusing. Because it would take you a while, unless you know this one, to find Waldo. Or if I'm going to do something in 5 seconds and communicate it, I'll say, yeah, we have all this data, but here's where I want you to focus, right? Here's Waldo, right here. This is the point I want to make. This is the story I want to tell. So most infographics have a 3-part story format. You got to start off at the top with what's the infographic, maybe background information, some history, just something to sort of frame your information for your end users so that they're going to get your main point. Make one main point, and this is so hard for clients to understand. Make one main point. Don't come to me and say, well, I want to tell these 5 stories in the infographic. You're welcome to, but no one's going to read all that. And then finish with a call to action. Give them something to do with that new insight that you've now shared with them. It doesn't have to be a heavy sales pitch. It can be buy our product. It could be eat healthier, visit our website, call your mother, anything like that. Just something you want them to do with that information. So this one's called the Tower of Beer. And the idea is that this intro says, okay, Tom starts investing $1 a day at the age of 25, and he's amassed this much information by retirement age of 70. And the big visual is, hey, now we have this much beer in stacked cases of beer, in which we visually compare to the Statue of Liberty, teeny tiny little Statue of Liberty, and the tallest tower in the world in Dubai right now. But Tom is fat, dumb, and happy and drunk in his retirement years. He's drinking his liquid beer because he doesn't have money for anything else. When you visualize data, it is so important to get it right. That's not what 80% looks like, and that's not what 20% looks like. And if you start looking for it, you will see this all the time. People just mess up the visual, and it kills your credibility so hard. Once someone catches that, the rest of your message is just toast. Just forget it, because they're just looking for errors now. You'll see it in the news, right? So you'll notice that the bars have no relevance whatsoever to the data itself. Let's assume the data is good, right? But the data is just all wrong. Here's another one, right? Pie charts have to add up to 100%. Okay, you have to add up to 100%. That's what a pie chart is. You can't mess it up like that.
Telling me they have the numbers wrong with
First of all, it's Fox.
And that's why I had NBC in the other one. It's not always Fox. Fox makes a number of mistakes, but that was not always it.
It's so dead on backwards.
I call these false visualizations. Anybody see this infographic from Vox Media? No? Okay. So this was back during the Ice Bucket Challenge. Everybody remember the Ice Bucket Challenge? Okay. So this column of numbers is how much money is being raised by different charities. And this column of numbers is how many people are dying from the diseases the charities are trying to raise money to fight. And they're color-coded to match. So this big pink one, right, is the Komen Race for the Cure, and then down here, this pink one is breast cancer, right? And so that they're color matched together.
Purple?
This one here, heart disease. Anyway, the data's great. The circles are all wrong. They messed up the math. So I redid it, right? And so this is the actually correct visualized data. And I added the lines because it makes it easier to compare the deaths to the charities. They're still in the same order. The data's good. It is a descending sequence, but nowhere near where it gets so small you can't even see the circles anymore. This is how I can tell. When you visualize shapes, especially circles, you are seeing a two-dimensional object. So you see the area of that circle. What they did was change the diameter of the circle. So in this case, I'm trying to show one number is 3 times larger than the other. If I triple the diameter like they did, you get a circle 9 times as large, right? And so you over-accentuate or under-accentuate the differences. You actually have to triple the area and then back into what the correct diameter is.
Did you send them a message?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. They figured out, and go, oh, geez, oh. Right, so if you got to know 1, so know 1 and this value is 4 times longer, that's the formula. You can always find a second diameter based on the first one. CNN did this too. Right, so these are number of ISIS attacks over in the Middle East. I'll blow this up. And what they did is, this is 1 incident, and this is 3 incidents, right? And what they did is they tripled the diameter. But all this is extra space that your eye sees is 9 times larger. So this looks like a huge, it's more attacks, but it looks like a huge hot zone. And it's really not that large. And it took them about a year to correct that. Now if you go to that website, it's finally corrected because they keep updating it. But for a year, it was wrong. Bar charts are the same way. It's a 2-dimensional object. You're seeing the area. The thing is, with rectangles, the math is really easy, right? So the height is directly proportional to the area. So as long as you keep these widths constant, all you got to do is change the heights to match your data, and you're done, right? So it's so much easier with rectangles. You never want to see a bar chart that looks like this, right? You won't have any idea. How do you make sense of that? Is this a bigger number than this one? Or, you can't tell because you've messed up in 2 different dimensions. You do want to break it up a little bit. I say break out of the big 3, which is pie charts, bar charts, and line charts. This is a great website. There are a whole bunch of other resources, but this one's called the Data Visualization Catalog. And it's this personal project of Severino's, where every one of these different visualization styles, you click on it, and it gives you a home page for that style, giving you examples, and if he's got them, links to tools that'll make that kind of visualization. It's a fabulous project. One of the things we do in the class I teach at SMU is try to come up with as many ways to visualize a percentage as possible. So we've created this cheat sheet that's got 20 different ways to visualize percentages. One class got up to 27 different ways to visualize percentages. But you can really sort of spread your wings and visualize things in different ways. You do want to be data transparent. And what I mean by data transparent is, where does your data come from? Why should people believe you? Why are you credible? This is a tree map. These squares or rectangles are sized to match the BBC's budget. And what they did, which is fantastic, was down here is they not only sourced their data, but included a link to a Google spreadsheet that has all the numbers. So that anybody can go see that spreadsheet, double check the numbers, do whatever they want with the data, and mess around with it. But you've got to give your audience a reason to believe your data. So here's an infographic that came out of the White House. The Obama energy agenda in 2011, I think. The White House blog is on infographics. Interns there just doing infographics. All this data about U.S. energy, obviously dependence on oil and alternative energy sources and stuff like that. Nobody has any idea where the numbers came from. None of the data is sourced. Everybody was like, those aren't the numbers I've heard before. Make it up. Those are all wrong. And so nobody was actually talking about the content. Everybody was just challenging the data because they didn't cite their source. I love Wikipedia. Don't use Wikipedia as your data source. I actually have to tell people that down at the bottom, find the reference, go find the original data source and make sure it says what you think it says, and then source the original. I also say don't obscure your data sources. Don't just say, yeah, it came from data.gov and expect people to go find it. You actually want to give them more to it. This is an infographic we did about DFW, but you want to actually source the full report so that people can find your data. All right, so those are my design tips. There are a whole bunch more, but tell a story, make sure you're accurate, mess around with different chart styles because nobody wants to see 100 bar charts all at once. It really helps to mix it up a little bit and be data transparent. So that's the first half, which is now you've designed your infographic. Now what do you do with it? And a lot of people they'll just put it on Facebook and say, okay, how come nobody's looking at our infographic? Nobody's sharing it. Or they'll put it on the company blog thinking that people read company blogs. Yeah. Right, it just doesn't work that way. You've got to set up your infographic for success. And if you don't, it's going to flop. Back in 2007 when I started, you could put an infographic out there and it would get a lot of traffic because there weren't many infographics out there in the first place. Now there are hundreds of thousands of infographics out there. You've got to set yours up to succeed. And when we talk about infographics and using them for purposes of SEO, we have a couple challenges. For an infographic, this is all that Google sees. All they see is an image asset that the browser is going to display when you bring up a web page. Google has no idea what's in your infographic. You have to tell Google or Bing or whoever what's in your infographic because their web spiders can't see their text, The OCR, they've tried a couple times, has never worked well. They really, really rely on you to provide additional information about your infographic. The goal being, right, someone to link back to it from a high-ranking site, right, so that we get some rank benefit from the infographic itself. And still, for almost the most part today, social media doesn't count. Social signals are not a huge factor in infographics and driving SEO or like page rank, that kind of stuff. They're great for awareness. You want something to go viral on social media so that you get a whole bunch of eyeballs on it and hopefully people start sharing it and posting it and posting backlinks to it. But going viral on social media does not help the SEO of the page itself. And I talked about relevance and trying to make the topic related to your business. You will see a lot of infographics that have nothing whatsoever to do with the company that put it out there. This is a history of James Bond movies put out by H&R Block, right? Tax preparation company. Did really well, did fantastic, but now why would H&R Block want to be ranking for James Bond? It doesn't help them in their target and trying to build the keywords that they're really focused on. So we have this infographic, which is our infographic release strategy, and there are 4 main steps to the infographic release strategy, and we're going to run through those. You got to set up a great landing page. You've got to do your own self-promotion. You've got to do some outreach. And at the end, and hardly anybody does this, you want to track it. You want to go see what happened to it, how many people did share it, and are there people out there that shared it that you want to actually fix because they didn't include any kind of link or anything like that to it. But figure out, did your promotional activities actually work? So we'll start with, we want to nail the landing page, right? We really want to set that up as our publication, as our hub. And we've got 11 things that I tell people to do with their landing page so that we can set it up correctly. And this is the kind of stuff where if you guys are already doing search, I'll go through this quick because you're going to understand a lot of this. But theoretically, we've designed this infographic. This is our theoretic infographic. We're done designing it, SEO strategy by the experts, and here are the keywords that we want to use, SEO experts and strategies. The first choice is, where do we post this infographic? Because you want it to be somewhere that you have control over. Somewhere that you can track how many people are viewing it, somewhere that you can put some information around it. Like I said, you need to put some text or something around it for Google and that sort of thing. So you don't want somewhere like Facebook to be the hub, the one place where you put your infographic. I've run into a lot of IT groups, web development groups that says, yeah, we put the infographic JPEG up on the server, here's the URL. And it wasn't a URL, it was a JPEG image file that was just put up on the server. That doesn't help either because you can't track that and you can't put anything around that. But you want a dedicated landing page, right? You want to somewhere create a URL that's not going to change, that's where you want to point everybody's traffic to. So that you control the analytics, you control the layout, and you can add text to it. The one thing, that's sort of a bonus thing that I really push with clients is that once you figure out what that dedicated page URL is, put it in the infographic itself. Most people that share infographics don't link back. And so if you want people to be able to find your infographic, they need to be able to have that URL in the JPEG image itself, wherever they find it, so they can find their way back to you. Your landing page URL needs to be fairly simple. Ideally, it's something readable, because the search engines are actually trying to parse words out of the URL and that web page to figure out what is this infographic image and why should I send people to this page. I tell people generally don't use underscores. A lot of people like to use underscores in their URLs. Historically, that has been a word joiner for the search engines, so that Google would consider this to be all one word run together instead of separate words. They're getting better now about parsing those, but as general practice, use hyphens instead of underscores. That just makes it clearer, and everybody understands that hyphens are word separators. So now we've used words, including infographic, because we saw people are searching for infographic. We've used our hyphens as word separators, and the sequence actually matters. So words in the beginning are more important to the search engines than words at the end. So I generally put infographic at the end because these keywords are going to be way more important to the client. Separate tip, make your own shortened link. You can get a whole separate set of statistics. This is bit.ly, but you may use a different link shortener through that service. If you create your own shortened link and then start using that in social media, because people will copy that and start using that instead of creating their own shortened link. Say that again?
Would you recommend using a custom bit.ly link where you can
Doesn't.
specify? Because I always have anxiety about what is this bit.ly link going to take me to, because it's just faulty.
If you have a custom one that uses your own company, base URL,
Search
right, but
experts infographic or something.
right. Oh, you mean the custom text?
Yeah.
Because if you pay bit.ly Pro, you can change the bit.ly part too,
Don't need to
and make it your own.
I want to know what I'm
Yes.
going to get.
Generally, I try to create custom ones at the end, but don't make it long. Keep it short. Yeah. Because you're right. People don't trust where's it going to go. So like I said, people are searching. We talked about this before. I mean, they're searching for that word infographic, right? So the landing page URL is the first part of this landing page that we're building. The landing page layout in general is going to look like this. Title tags are important. A lot of people don't understand title tags. Everybody here knows title tags. I'm pretty sure you guys are talking search, you know title tags and where title tags get used in Google, and they're visible in the browser bar and actually get shown up when you share in Facebook if you don't set up separate text. The general rule is, unless you guys know of anything different, I say keep it shorter than 55 characters. About 55 characters is where Google starts cutting them off on the search page. Does that ring true for you guys?
I think they do pixels.
Yeah, it is pixels, but my general is 55 because you're right, the font will change differently. But it's just an easier general rule. You can check it, once you've created it. So that goes up in the top. The page title is separate from the title tag. So you actually want to have an H1 page title on the page to start off in big bold letters. What is your infographic? This is what Google is going to consider the most important text to be related to your infographic. And then put some text on there. This is readable text user. Just in the body text, please tell them what this infographic is about. Doesn't have to be word for word something from the infographic. It can be different text. But this is the text that the reader is going to read as well as the search engines. And you can include links. And the nice thing about including links in this little text block is that a lot of people that share your infographic will also copy this text block. And that gives you one more opportunity to get a link from somebody who shared your infographic. So we throw that at the top of the page. Social sharing buttons. In general, do you guys use a sharing service? Add this, share this, or do you like the WordPress block of social sharing buttons, or do you go to Twitter, create a button, go to Facebook, create a button, and create individual buttons?
Lately I've been using Jetpack, but
Jetpack, okay.
I've noticed some issues with page speed on some of those sharing ones, so just kind of make sure whatever you use.
Yep. Generally, the clients we're working with, whether it's the marketing department or whoever, they're at the whim of the web developers who've said, this is what we're using on the website. But you want to figure out what it is you're using. If you do something custom, so like this is what Twitter looks like if you create a Twitter button all by itself, you can specify what text pops up as the default in that when they click tweet, and what image gets shown, what link it goes back to, so it goes back to your infographic landing page. You have a lot more control over it than if you use one of the group buttons. But you need to do something, right? You want to have those buttons up here at the top of the page above the scroll before the infographic itself. The infographic image next on the page, the image file name itself matters. And it follows the same rules as the HTML. Right, so you want to have multiple words. You don't want your infographic just to be called infographic.jpg, right? Or yeah, infographic 01 draft 7 final, or something like that. That's right, final 3, because I've done that. Right, same thing. Underscores are word joiners, hyphens are word separators. You want to have a file name that's readable, and they can parse the word separately using the hyphens, and so that'd be a good file name for the JPEG. When you put it in the block, whether you do an import or whatever, you want to use what's called alt text attribute. So the alt text attribute is what displays on the page if someone says turn off images. If anybody's old enough to remember using a modem, we used to turn off images because the page would load faster, and that's what would show up. Today, for accessibility purposes, that's what like a screen reader would read to somebody with vision impairments. They would read that text behind the image, but the search engines actually look in this text block here to figure out, is there something more I can learn about this image, because this is tied directly to the infographic image itself. Is there anything I can learn from there to figure out what is this thing that's going to be displayed on the page? And so that displays it, right, and it scrolls off the bottom of our page. And then we want to use some embed code. So everybody familiar with embed embed code. Embed code, right, is just raw HTML, but you've got to put it in a text area block so that your browser doesn't actually execute it. It actually displays it as text code so that anybody can copy this and paste this in their blog post, and magically your infographic appears. So if they want to share it otherwise, download the JPEG, upload it to their server, links, put text around it, that's a lot of work, where I copy, paste, and I'm done. And I didn't have to use, space on my server to host your infographic. I could just feed off of your server. There are a couple issues with this. It does give you control as to not only where the link goes, because you want it to go back to your landing page, not only the alt text and any additional text maybe that shows up at the bottom of the infographic, but you don't want to scare people off. A lot of people don't use it. It's fully functional code. If this were to scroll off the bottom like, oh my God, there's a huge block of HTML code, nobody's going to copy and paste it because they don't want you putting all that code on their website. You want to keep it simple, which is display this image, it's a link, and here's a click. And you can control that. I would say maybe 20 to 30% of people that share an infographic are going to look and consider using the embed code, but it's nice when they do because it's linked and has all the text that we wanted to include. So that shows up. Here it's called a text area. So this text area in HTML is what creates this block that displays code instead of executing it. And it shows up at the bottom as this block. Right, put a little text here. So please share by copying this text. And so that's our landing page layout. You also want to create thumbnails. You don't want to take this tall format infographic and then share that in social media. Every social media site will cut it different ways. And you have really no control over where it cuts it. So we usually create these thumbnails sized for the different social media platforms. So Twitter generally is 2 by 1, 2 wide by 1 tall. Square works in a lot of places. Of course, Instagram, but it also works really nicely on LinkedIn and Facebook. Sizes change as to what displays on social media sites. Every year, this is 2017. No, these are from 2016. These are social media sheets about what image sizes display on Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and LinkedIn and YouTube. This is the one that's linked in that links page, which is the most current 2017 one that I've seen. Problem is explicit versus implicit images. So when I say, here I want to share this infographic and here's the link to it, and this is Facebook, right? It will actually go to that page, try to find an image. Sometimes it'll give you a choice of a couple of images, but it creates this tiny thumbnail of it. Versus if I use my thumbnail that's sized to be an image that they display on Facebook and then upload an image instead of using the link, I actually get a bigger image in the feed. The downside is this isn't clickable. You click it, you just see a bigger image, right? You click this, you actually go to that page. So there's a trade-off. That's why this link always has to end up in text as well, so that they can still get back to your page.
You can just also Yoast. I think Yoast gives you an opportunity to promote your image.
And this is very general because Facebook today, if your image is close to their format, they're going to try to display this. So sometimes it'll pick it up like this. Most of the time, especially with those tall formats, it'll be like this. It'll be small. Twitter does this weird thing. Like I said, it's a 2 by 1 ratio, but they cut it out of exactly the middle of whatever the image is. And it pixelates it. For some reason, it like shrunk it to this size and then blew it up to fit in there. So you really get a nasty image if you put a full tall infographic on Twitter. You really want to create your own and then upload it as a link and you get a nice image that shows up in Twitter. Test your landing page to be mobile friendly. Your web team has probably done this for the entire website. You don't want to just use the HTML to change the size of your infographic. What you can do, and HTML completely allows this, is you could put your image in there, a full 2,000 pixel wide, really high res image, and in the HTML say only display it 800 by 1800, and it'll shrink it down the page. Every browser, especially phones out there, is going to download this full high res JPEG image, and they're going to be like, why is this page loading? Right? It's this full size image out there. You really want to create a couple custom sizes, big and small, that it downloads and displays more properly. Google's mobile friendly test, is everybody familiar with Google's mobile friendly test? You can put your landing page in here and let them tell you what they see. It'll give you a little analysis of how long the page loaded and how big the images were and that sort of stuff, and it'll actually give you some feedback as to how mobile-friendly your infographic landing page is. And then number 11, this is sort of a bonus one that a lot of people don't do, that we do for a lot of clients, and that if you're going to upload a JPEG image, that's the same format as, say, full-color photos are. There's a lot of data in the JPEG format itself that you can edit. It just normally takes an additional editor. It's not something that Photoshop can do. You actually have to get an EXIF editor. For a regular photo, so here's a photo I took at South by Southwest, and this is the tool I use, EXIF editor. It's a Mac program, but there are a whole bunch of EXIF editors out there. It's mainly for photography. It's got what camera it was, and the exposure, and the f-stop, and the shutter speed, and the GPS coordinates, right? And so this is all the information about the photo that this EXIF data was created for. But if you bring in your infographic, you can load some simple stuff like who the artist or the company is, what the image description is, and put that over in the headline too, so it's the same in the headline, and a handful of keywords, and those are built into the JPEG image. Those go with the JPEG image no matter who and copies it and who puts it on their website. It'll always have that text that the search engines can also see inside that JPEG image. So that's 11 things to set up your landing page. How are we doing on time? We all right? Okay. Publishing and promotion and outreach. Like we said, you've got one landing page, but you've got to do some self-promotion. You've got to tell people that you've created this infographic. If you've got a blog and you didn't use that as your landing page, because some companies do, make a blog post about it, point your links back to that infographic landing page. Your company's social media, point links back to it. Email newsletter to customers. If you have any control over your homepage, people are like, no, you can't put that on the homepage, but you can put a thumbnail for a couple weeks during your promotion that drive traffic to your infographic landing page. On your product page, if that's what the infographics related to, that kind of thing. When you post on social media, there are a handful of things here. Go ahead and post across every channel your company has. Post multiple times, not just once. And that could be multiple days and different times of the day, because you're going to catch different parts of your audience. Each post ideally should be different. Sometimes even I don't do that. Sometimes I'll take the same post and do one midday and do one in the middle, because I've got a big audience over on the other side of the globe as well. And so you catch them in their time zone. And use those thumbnail images. You know, that drives people to your landing page because they want to see the full-size infographic. This is some Bitly studies. Have you guys seen this data before? So this is the half-life of a link online. And so this is now about 3 years old, I think. And what this tells us is that about half of the clicks happen in the first 3 hours of a post. And then it trails off this, the long trail forever, because it never leaves the internet. It's on there forever. But you're going to get about half your clicks on Facebook, Twitter, and direct links in the first 3 hours, and then it drops down. So you don't want to do, 3 posts 10 minutes apart. Don't waste your time doing that. But do one now, do one this afternoon, do one tomorrow, and then do one 3 days from now. Just something to keep that traffic going to that same page. This is YouTube for some reason. They're about 8 hours. They have a longer half-life for some reason. It takes people longer to watch the videos. If you're going to promote posts, if you want to pay to promote these posts in places like Facebook, Facebook used to have what's called the 20% rule. You guys familiar with the 20% rule? So the 20% rule is any image, you draw a 5x5 grid on it, and they would only allow you to have text in 5 squares. If you had text in more squares covering up more of that image, they wouldn't let you make that as an image that's promoted or paid to promote as an ad. They've changed that. It's still generally about that much text to image that they want to have, but they've created this new image tester page. So the Facebook image tester lets you upload any image, and it will give you one of these scores. It's okay, like this one's okay. It's got text at the bottom, and then all this is image. Low. When you get up to medium, your ad's reach is going to be lower, which means they're literally going to reduce how many people see your ad. And if it's too high, they just may say, sorry, we're not going to run that at all. We know that turns off our customers, our Facebook customers. We're not even going to run your ad or your promoted post or something like that. So the Facebook image tester is a great way to test your thumbnails and what you want to post up there. Make sure that it's something that's going to go through their process. Kick off sharing in your own company. This actually is a challenge for a lot of companies. A lot of people feel like they should not be posting anything related to the company they work for. If you're not in the social media group, if you're not in the marketing group, you don't want to be caught posting something about your company. You feel like it could reflect badly on you. So if you want people to share your infographic, we generally say put out an email, put out a call that says, please, we've put out this new infographic. We want it shared as widely as possible. Please feel, you can't force them to it, but please feel free to share this with your friends and family and your social media networks. That would really help us get some more exposure. And you really have to give them that permission to share. Otherwise, they're like, yeah, no, that's work. I don't want to do that. I don't want to mix that, or I don't want to feel like anybody thinks I'm posting on behalf of the company. And then outreach. Outreach generally has 4 channels. Key influencers in your industry. Could be social media people, could be people in your industry, like your industry group or conference or something like that. News media, if you've put out a PR, if you've got a channel to put out PR about your infographic. Personal networks, and don't forget infographic sites. That's really what my whole site is built on Cool Infographics, is people submitting infographics. So when you look at key influencers, you really want to question, are these people you really would like to have post on your behalf or post your infographic? Are they active? Do they drive traffic? How many followers do they have? Are they comfortable? Have they posted infographics before? All that will help you reach these people, especially if they're comfortable posting infographics and they're certainly active in your industry. That's the kind of content they're looking for. When you write a note to those influencers, you may or may not know them, but I'm assuming in this case you don't know them, you've just found them. Make it a personal note. Why is this infographic relevant to them and to their audience? Link to the infographic landing page. Don't send them a JPEG, because then they'll post the JPEG and never give you a link back to your website. And a lot of PR for PR purposes are like, hey, we have this exclusive thing. Would you like to hear about it? Send me a note if you'd like to hear more. And they've taken that idea and applied it to infographics and said, hey, we've got this new infographic. If you'd like to see it, email me back. I will never email you back. Once an infographic's posted online, there is no exclusivity whatsoever. You want it shared by as many people and on many channels as possible. So just give me the link and give me some text description, because I got to write a blog post too and make my job easier. Give me a little paragraph that I can put in my blog post about what is this infographic, so that I don't have to write it myself. I get, I think, somewhere between 300 and 400 submissions a week. And I only post 2 or 3 on the website. Most of them fall into one of these errors or mistakes. I'll get form letters, obvious form letters with like blanks, like fill in here, or somebody else's name they've plugged in and just copy pasted. Don't get the influencer name or their website wrong. Don't include, like I said, don't include the JPEG image. I don't want to be your hosting site. I don't want to be your landing page. I'm trying to help share and give links back to your page. Don't offer exclusivity, and don't ask for a reply. If I like the link, I'll post it. If not, that's fine. We don't need to talk about it. I've got 299 more emails to go through and 279 more newspapers to read. But don't forget the infographic sites. There are 3 kinds of infographic sites. Self-publishing sites where you can upload your own stuff, like Flickr. You just create an account and upload your own, create your own link. Visually is a big one, as a gallery of infographics. Free submission sites like my site, where I don't charge anybody, I don't accept money for posts, I only post what I like. But you can submit to a number of the free submission sites. And then there are paid submission sites. So you can pay anywhere between 10 and 80 bucks just to get them to post your infographic on their gallery. And you get to choose what link it goes back to and what text goes along with it, but you're paying for that service and you're paying for that place on their website. Certainly PR, there are a lot of free PR websites, even if you don't have a PR team that you can lean on and say, hey, put out this press release and include our infographic. You can do your own press release through a number of these free sites. And that shows up very nicely as backlinks and as Google search results. And then tracking, right? So now your infograpic's out there, you've promoted it, you've reached out to influencers, hopefully they've started promoting it or sharing it. There are a couple ways beyond just your own Google Analytics that you can look to figure out how is this infographic doing. One is social sharing metrics. Those are becoming more and more hidden and more hard to see on other sites. But don't forget to look at your own versus, if I posted it, what do my numbers look like? That kind of thing. Backlinks, use Moz and other sites like that, which I'll show in just a second, to find out who's backlinking to your landing page. And you can figure out which major sites or minor sites or crazy sites have posted your infographic. And then we'll talk about a reverse image search as well, which is people who post it without linking at all. So you can always look at Google Analytics for your landing page. Like I said earlier, Bitly gives you a whole bunch of analytics as well. So if you created your own link shortener or shortened link, you can then go see how many people followed the shortened link that you used. And you can even create separate ones. So customs, one's on Facebook, one's on Twitter, one LinkedIn, and you can actually track, okay, which one did better, which one actually drew more traffic back to my site. Like I said, social counters and other sites historically has been pretty strong. More and more now, those you can't even find buttons that have those counters on them anymore. They're taking those counters off, so that's becoming harder to watch. For backlinks, Moz, do you guys use Moz? Do you guys use Majestic? One or the other? I don't have any preference one way or the other, just to track backlinks. Any thoughts? Yes? No? Okay. But definitely see, what kind of links that, even if you're not a paid member, you can put your own website in there for free to see what backlinks are back to your site. Open SEO Stats. Anybody use this plugin in Chrome? Open SEO Stats is a plugin that on any page, if you click on this little icon, it'll open up and give you a whole bunch of the SEO stats, as well as link you back to stuff like that, and Alexa and Archive, and what your page rank is, and gives you just a quick snapshot of the SEO stats that it can read off of your web page. So go to your landing page, and then you pop that up, and you can see a whole bunch of stats. Now, reverse image searches are a way to find people who posted your infographic but did not link to your website. And it may be really big websites, it may be really small websites where you don't care. Google, if you go to Google and then search by image, you literally drag your JPEG file into here, and it will then find any version of that image it can find on the web. It's built into Chrome, so that if you right-click on any image, so you right-click on your infographic, you can say, search Google for this image. It'll do the same thing. And you can skip this step. And if you don't use Chrome, TinEye does the same thing and has plugins for Firefox and Opera and Safari and the other ones, so you can do that right-click function if you want to do that. And you can load that into your browser. And what you get, right, is a search of, here are all the sites that include this image, and you want to look at the ones that you really care about. Certainly stronger, more popular websites, and figure out, did they actually link back or not? Because you can really make a huge influence or impact to how dramatic your infographic is if you go back to them and say, hey, we really love that you shared our infographic. Would you please just put the link back to our original page? And be nice about it. Nobody likes a jerk. And then just some final resources. For data viz and design, I maintain a tools page on Cool Infographics. I've got hundreds of tools for infographic design or chart design or mapping or JavaScript interactive tools, that kind of thing. We have a LinkedIn group to discuss the craft of designing and promoting and publishing infographics. So we got about, I don't know what we have now, like 1,600, 1,800 members. The idea is to actually talk about it. I need to go in there now, but I try to be good at moderating and pulling out people that just go there and go, hey, here's my infographic. Well, that's not what we're here for. We actually want to talk about it. And if you want to check out my book, I've got a couple copies you can page through, but if you go to coolinfographics.com/book, you can download the first chapter for free as a PDF. If you ever come to the Dallas area, I run the Dallas Data Visualization Infographics group. We are a meetup group where we have monthly meetings as well, and talk about everything from good presentation design, good chart design, to programming in R and D3 and publishing infographics, that kind of thing. And there you have it. Any questions?
Can you go back?
Go ahead. Sure, go ahead. What do you want to go back to?
Your very first slide where you have the whole link.
Oh, yeah, the link? We can absolutely do that, yep.
And then you can get to that.
There you go. Go ahead.
So I've noticed on Pinterest, whenever I go searching through web design, that kind of thing, I see a lot of infographics.
Yep.
Seems like it does pretty well. There's certain categories or works better than others, or have you you seen any patterns?
Pinterest is unique. There's a unique audience for infographics. A lot of people will categorize them by topic, right? So your Pinterest board might be about cars, and so you have a handful of car photos as well as some infographics mixed in with them. Some sites actually are nothing but infographics, and they'll do health infographics and financial infographics and political infographics, you know, and whatever. But that scrolling long format works really well in Pinterest. And I find that people like to skim the images on Pinterest. That group of people is a whole different audience than people that ever end up at the website. Or that follow on Facebook or Twitter or something like that. It's an entirely different channel of people that don't want to talk about it. They just want to skim through it and try and find information.
Now, if you're a business, do you find that people from Pinterest find those infographics and go to this page and then convert, like, is there?
Sometimes, not a lot.
Yeah.
So are you able to add a link? So I have a question about like.
Yep.
So you are able to add a link in the infographic in Pinterest.
Yep. Yeah, so you can make the infographic clickable to get back to your landing page.
Question about the unshareable infographics. I feel like it centralizes where people have to go out to see it.
Yes.
I'm curious, like what's kind of the upside downside to that?
So he's talking about the interactive ones.
Yeah.
Right, so the active or animated ones, they do really well on the landing page. They're really hard to share. We generally create snapshots, right? So still thumbnails or snapshots that you can then share on Facebook. Facebook, you can handle an animated GIF, right? You got to click to play it, or it auto-plays on your phone. So we do some of that so that you can sort of see what the animation would do when you get to the page. You know, come and see more. That's really the tough part, right? Is you got to give people a tease.
I love the idea.
And then bring them to your page, because your page is the only place they can get the full experience. The New York Times is master at this.
Really good conversion rate. It's like you want people to come to you.
Right.
Assuming it's not an SEO strategy or link building.
Yep. So the New York Times has this team of designers that does just interactive stuff, and the only way to share them is a still shot, right? And so, but you want to see how people elect it, or especially if you talk about storytelling in data viz, you want to leave some mystery, right? So in the sharing, you say, you know, what happened next, or you don't actually show the whole data. You have to go to the main site to go see the full data.
Gotcha.
Right, so here's what happened up through the year 2000, you know, and then after 2000, you got to go to the full interactive site to see the final piece of it.
So in terms of page load, since infographics are pretty like big, usually.
Yeah, they're.
Are you using any other tools to reduce the size of the files, or like I know that now you can use SourceSet and have different files, image files for the devices.
Yep. I know that on my site it happens automatically, so I use Squarespace. Right, so Squarespace creates 9 file sizes for every image I upload. So every infographic I put up there, it's got 9. It creates 9 sizes. So if you're on your phone, you get a much smaller size. And there are, you know, WordPress will do a lot of that. I generally suggest, I think I had it in here, that at the bare minimum you have 2 sizes. Right, you've got. Here you go. You've got one, the general rule is 800 pixel wide is usually a full-size infographic. So that fits in most browser windows and pulls down. And then a 500 pixel wide version smaller that fits in a blog post. So a lot of the WordPress templates have a lot of sidebar stuff going on, and so they shrink the amount of space that's available for the actual data. And so we generally use a 500 pixel wide JPEG image, and then however long, but the width is what matters on blog posts. Generally, when we create that embed code, here's an inside tip. We create that embed code, we use the 500 pixel version in here. So this file name ends with 500 pix JPEG, and we've uploaded that. Most people that are using the embed code are using it in a blog post, and if you don't, it can just blow out the sidebar. And so the infographic will show up on their website, and they'll say, oh, that doesn't work, and they'll delete it. You know, so you want to use the smaller size in the embed code so that it fits within the most common content width of blogs.
How about actually like hiring someone to pay for it? Design. I mean,
So that's what we do. That's what we do. That's what the company does.
I mean, I don't mind if you let us know, like, what the price range is, so we
Yep.
kind of ballpark.
So InfoNood is my design company, and we design both marketing and the internal ones. Usually we try to do it on a project basis. A general infographic design project is about $2,500 to $3,000. Takes 2 to 3 weeks. That's a really general mid-range project. That assumes you know what you want to talk about and you're bringing data to the table. If we have to go do data research or help you analyze your data, all that starts to add up, to stuff. But if you already know what you want to have, hey, we did this research, we've written this executive summary or this PR, we want to do an infographic and a blog post to really promote it, you've already got all your content, we've just got to create the design to then turn around and share that, let you guys do it.
Infographics is definitely not in our wheelhouse, and I'm sure everyone's done this, but we made a mistake of going outside our wheelhouse, and
Yep.
we saw like, oh, it's a lot of money. No, we did it. It's not a lot of money. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, so we
Yeah, and people get upset with this. Okay, graphic designers are generally bad at this. You're like, what? It says infographic, it must be a graphic designer thing. Well, graphic designers don't want to deal with spreadsheets or statistics or databases or story. I mean, they're good at storytelling, that's really what we want to focus on, but we generally focus on that 5 seconds, right? We've got to tell that story in 5 seconds. Later, we'll figure out what the color palette is and what our typography was and how we gridded it out, because that's where they want to start. But we really want to start about the story and make sure that story gets across before anything else. And I've got designers that work for me, but they're all over the place. I mean, I've got one in New York and one in the UK and one in Portland and one in California, right? And they're all over the place because it's really hard to find good people that do this. And there's more crap out there than there's golf. There's a lot, way more infographics out there than there are good infographics. Like YouTube, right? There's a lot more crap videos out there than there are the really good ones.
So your book, is it also available on Kindle?
Yep. You can get it on Amazon Kindle. You can buy it in the iBook store. Hard copies through Amazon or Barnes & Noble, that kind of stuff. If anybody's interested, I do have copies. They're heavy to carry around, so I've got like 4. But if anybody's interested, I've got a couple.
I have just one thing.
Yep.
Bothering me about that embed code.
Yep.
It's not the absolute URL for the image source, so are you hoping that folks will post the image themselves?
No.
Do you want them to point back to the image on your website?
Right, so this image source is coming from my site, the server image, and linking back to this page.
Sure, but when I copy that code, I don't have the domain in front of the image.
Oh, right. You're right. I did this in the book. Right, but the idea would be you put your full URL in there so that it literally pulls from your server onto their site so they didn't have to load it onto their server.
Sure.
Sorry, yes, that's good catch.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you read about it with more text, it's in there. It explains that, but good catch. You guys are really in there. Okay?
another round of applause.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
That was awesome.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Yeah.